Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy, and welcome to our first Bond content post our Bond retrospective. It feels very weird. That felt very final when we did that video, but we did announce at the end of that video that our content, our James Bond content, would return, as indeed James Bond will return. And I think that's the question on everyone's lips at the moment: is what's next for the James Bond franchise? And no, that wasn't a technical hitch in the intro for the video. That was done on purpose by George, because we don't know who the new James Bond's going to be. No one knows. Well, I'm sure the producers know. I'm sure people behind the scenes know who the next James Bond is. It would amaze me if they don't have someone already lined up right now. But this is going to be a fun video. This is going to be a sort of not only a discussion about where we think it's going to head into the next iteration of James Bond, because Bond will always continue. We're also going to be pitching our idea for a future James Bond film, what we want the next James Bond film to be. Now, we're going to go into all the kind of parameters. We're going to be casting a new Bond. Who's going to be the new Bond girl doing the new James Bond thing? We've even got, in some cases, either a very short or a very lengthy plot synopsis of what we want the James Bond film to be about. It's going to be everything. We've had a little bit of fun with this. I do want to say we are pre-recording this a lot earlier than we initially thought we would. So I think a lot of us were kind of down to the wire and we had to kind of rush ideas out. So I know mine, for example, is incredibly rushed. I can't vouch for everyone else's, but this is going to be fun. And, you know, we also encourage you to sort of send in your ideas of what you want to see from the next James Bond film. But before we dive into these pitches, I mean, you know, if Broccoli's, if you're watching this by any chance, you know, hit us up. One of these might be an absolute zinger for another James Bond film. Before we dive into them, over to George with the socials.
Absolutely, guys. So we want you to comment below. I mean, we always say comment along. That is the gist of it. But real stuff. Who do you want to see play Bond? Anyone we talk about tonight? Actors, roles, characters, story. Just comment along with us because you know this is all high purpose. It isn't something that could happen. It very could happen, and then we'll drop you on a message in a couple of years and have some conversation. But I probably doubt it. So do comment along tonight. Hit that like button. As I said, hit the subscribe. There is more Bond content coming on the way. The retrospective is kind of over. But just as a tease, the Casino Royale 1967 review is coming this Tuesday, which also scares us because everything's just blown into.
We need to watch it. We actually need to watch it.
and it's me saying this as well that there should have been three of us on tonight, but because of other things happening, we couldn't get a slot for all three of us together. So Tayte has sent in his video. We'll play first when we get into it. But I guess as always, I'm going to bring up the social medias: Twitter at @cinema_savvy, Facebook and letterboxd.com/cinemasavvy. Find us on there. We're interactive. We obviously plan our videos. We announce when we're doing our videos, all that kind of stuff. And obviously, we like to reply to you guys that do tweet stuff about Bond and whatnot. So it's going to be a really interesting one to pre-record. And I think I might give an intro as to how we're sort of going about it. So what we have between us, I don't actually, I was going to bring up a notepad, but it's got all my spoilers on, so I can't actually do that. We're kind of formulating this in the way we've done our reviews. So we essentially have a checklist of characters and a lovely little tease of what's going to come. So I'm just going to go over some things that each of us will talk about. Again, Tayte sent his video in, so we'll talk about his afterwards. It's been on. So you won't see us for 24 minutes, I believe the video length is. I have not watched it. Chris hasn't watched it. So we're both going to be coming out of this completely unknown. So that's worth saying. Obviously, you know, me and him will be bouncing back when us to talk about it. So I just want to get all three of us on. But we will be talking about each of us who would like to see play James Bond. A Bond girl or girls. Because obviously there could be one, there could be two. Could be maybe Storm Swinging Adventures 3. Has that been done for? I don't know. Villain or villains. An M, a Q, a Moneypenny, and a kind of unofficial addition that came to us halfway through the retrospective was like the Allies corner. So if any of us have cast an ally or allies, we'll also talk about them. And then the really usual stuff, the director, the theme, the soundtrack. So it's not just going to be us saying names. It's not a checklist. I know it kind of is, but it's not. We're going to go into it, maybe explain why, all that stuff. And then we're going to also talk about, which will be first, the pre-title sequence. So this isn't fan fiction as a whole. We've not written a script. At least we hope Tayte hasn't sent us in a video.
Could be. We don't know.
We don't know. As I said, we don't know. So we're as new to this as you at home. It's going to be really fun to watch it. But we have put in a pre-title sequence. Mine's not massively detailed. And then just essentially a plot summary, you know, not a Wikipedia 10 paragraphs, again, not a full script, but essentially the plot of the film and maybe anything you want to talk about. So with each doing our own, and the way we're going to do it, rather than a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, we're just going to completely all do our own videos. Before we play Tate's video, is there anything else we need to let people know at home? I don't know. I'm honestly nervous to watch this because we've never done a video like this before as well. I think that was worth adding. This is very new to on the channel, so I think I'm kind of nervous to even say mine, let alone listen to an analysis.
It puts you in a very vulnerable state, doesn't it? It's just like, I mean, it's not total fan fiction. I mean, we might have a video with a lot of fan fiction in. I've got a plot synopsis that might also be considered fan fiction, but I have my notepad here because I'm bracing myself for a very long video right now, and we are going to be talking about it afterwards. So I'm going to be making notes because, obviously, if Tate could have been here, sadly he couldn't be on here tonight. We would have probably broken this down segment by segment and, commented on each casting of each thing. As it is, we're getting it one lump sum. We're getting it, you're getting it. We're all in, we're all in this boat together. We're going to get through it. So, yeah, I think with all that being said, we'll hit play on the video and I'll get taking notes and we'll chat about it afterwards.
Absolutely. See you all on the other side.
Hi there, guys. Tate here with what I can only say is an unusual video. Well, it is going to be my kind of picks for what I want with my next Bond. And this one's going to be very interesting because I've got some picks which are a little bit obvious, a little bit kind of less obvious and stuff like that. We'll get into it as we go along. So I guess we start off with the big one. Who's going to be playing my next James Bond? And I may have given this away already in one of the previous videos, but my next James Bond is going to be Dan Stevens. Ever since kind of watching Downton Abbey and stuff like that, you can tell immediately that he fits in that role. We haven't seen him in much to do with action. I haven't seen Legion, personally. I'm assuming there's some action in that, seeing as it's kind of X-Men and stuff like that. But he has the look. He absolutely has the look. He has the acting chops as well. I think he would be a fantastic follow-on from Daniel Craig. I want this Bond to be a bit less of the kind of brutal approach that we've had previously with Bond and stuff like that. I feel like Bond has strayed quite heavily into the territory of the Bourne films and stuff like that. I think the one that kind of gets the most stick for that is Quantum of Solace, with its kind of move towards that style of films with kind of the heavily brutalized violence, stuff like that. I want to bring it back to more of a spy caper. I want to bring it back to that kind of, okay, he is a super spy kind of person. Sure, he has the action beats and stuff like that, but I want it to be an actor's actor. And for that, I think Dan Stevens absolutely fits the role. Following up from that, we got to go with the Bond girls. Now, I want multiple Bond girls here. I don't want it to just be one Bond girl in particular. I think in most Bond films you'll see more than one, but in recent times they've kind of had that focus of Léa Seydoux being kind of the main and only. And sure, in Spectre he goes off with Monica Bellucci, and in No Time to Die, Ana de Armas is kind of a Bond film. Like Bond girl, I personally think he should have multiple different partners throughout the film. I think it's Bond. I think he needs to be a little bit sleazier and stuff like that and move back to those roots. He's a spy. He doesn't get attachments. He's focused on the mission and that's all he's focused on. So with that, my first Bond girl is going to be Anya Taylor-Joy. She has been fantastic in recent times and stuff like The Queen's Gambit in Last Night in Soho as well, where she plays a fantastic femme fatale. Brilliant actress. She absolutely brings the chops. She brings the appeal as well. In that department, she is just a great actress. I think she absolutely suits the role of a Bond girl. She has that look. I reckon stylize her up as much as you want. Have her walking through a casino. You can almost picture it now, kind of her being in that setting, being around Bond and being completely comfortable with that. My second choice for a Bond girl, and I want this one to be my main Bond girl, and that is Daniela Melhia. Portuguese actress. It's always good to see British actresses and British actors used within the Bond films. But it's also good to see some actors throughout Europe, throughout America, throughout everywhere. And her performance in The Suicide Squad, I want to point out, was absolutely fantastic. I think she has a bright future ahead of her. I'm really hoping that she's put in a lot more films and stuff like that. I'm just looking at her IMDb, and she has a film coming out called Assassin Club. So I can only assume that she would kind of fit into this world really, really well. And I could definitely see her becoming like a fantastic kind of brutal, hard kind of, but also has that soft nature to her Bond girl within the franchise. Now we got to move on to the villains. Now, I've had this choice for a like a henchman villain for a very long time now. I'm very surprised ever since I first saw him on screen that we weren't able to get him. And it will make a bit more sense once I talk about the plot towards the end of kind of this. But having him as a villain henchman would absolutely be fantastic. And that is Pilou Asbæk, the Danish actor who is most likely seen as Euron Greyjoy in Game of Thrones. He is fantastic. He can be brutal. He can be manic. He can be insane. That's what I want from this character. I want it to be a memorable henchman. When was the last time we had a properly memorable henchman? And before, I know George will comment on this, before George says, oh, but we had Bautista, who actually has lines. When was the last time we had a memorable henchman who was really, really memorable, like a stand-up from the film that actually had lines? I think Pilou Asbæk fits that mold perfectly. I think he just looks fantastic. His acting skills, he can really ham it up and bring it home with that. If he needs to deliver a pun, he absolutely could. I can see him as an evil spy, which may be a slight hint as to where my plot is going. Now, I've got for my main villain, I've got a character name already, and it's also going to be the title of my film that I'm going to put out here. Hollywood, you're listening right now, right? So, my villain is going to be Emma Thompson, and she will be playing the character of Madame Shatterglass. And the film is going to be Shatterglass. So we like villains that have names linked to the title. You got Goldfinger, you got Thunderbolt. It harkens back to the old days of those fantastic films where the villain was that character that would stand out, hopefully. I think Emma Thompson, in her recent roles, has been absolutely knocking it out of the park. I remember seeing her in Cruella as the Baroness. Absolutely fantastic. Like, as a villain's performance. She has played a role in a Johnny English film, if you want that kind of spy angle. But it's very interesting that I want her to be kind of almost the anti-M that we've seen from Judi Dench's M. I want her in a character role to be kind of that head of a spy agency, but kind of slightly bitter and twisted, and holds that title of I am Madame Shatterglass and gets people to call her by that name. People who, like Pilou Asbæk, is actually scared of what she may do. That's the kind of character that I want to put forward here. And she can play lovely kind of gentle characters and stuff like that. She can play absolutely terrifying characters as well, as we've all seen before. So I think Emma Thompson in that role would be absolutely fantastic. Now, let's move on to some of Bond's ally characters. So we've got M, Q, Moneypenny, and any allies that I want to add on to that. So first off, M. I was debating over this for a very long time. And I actually picked a character who has been in a James Bond film before, earlier on in his career. And he's also played Ian Fleming in a film called Goldeneye, which was about the life of Ian Fleming. So I've gone with Charles Dance because his kind of commanding role of character, especially from watching like Game of Thrones and stuff like that, but all of his other roles as well, he absolutely commands the screen. He is one of those characters where you can see him being nice, soft, and gentle, but you can also see him having that kind of brutal snappiness that needs to be done for the mission. He is one of those characters which you would immediately liken to Ralph Fiennes' kind of M. And I think he's a character who would carry the character forward without changing too much. I don't want a completely wild, wacky, like we're going to go really young or we're going to go super old or we're going to go something completely different. I want it to be a very similar character to what is being kept forward. A stern kind of British caricature, whether it's male or female, who kind of gives Bond the mission, gives Bond a telling off every now and then, gets told off themselves when Bond kind of smirks and smiles and gives himself as correct. I think Charles Dance is that character who can show all of those emotions and would be fantastic for a set of films if we need him. I think he's one of those characters that would carry it over with the role and even bloom with it and develop the character, just like Ralph Fiennes did, just like Judi Dench did. For Q, I've picked someone who might be picked as a Bond from one of us. I have no idea yet. He's an actor who has been like touted as possibly being Bond, but I see him as a Q-like character. I don't see him as a Bond. I see him as a character who's kind of a little bit more kind of quiet inside themselves and a little bit odd, like a little bit striking and stuff like that. So I've gone with Cillian Murphy, who has been in many different things. 28 Days Later being kind of the first film that I saw him in. He was in Sunshine. He's been in like Christopher Nolan films, a lot of them. Peaky Blinders recently as well. He is an actor who is all over the place at the moment. He is going through a fantastic career. Do I think he should be Bond? No. Do I think he should be Q? I think he would be a fantastic Q. Honestly, I think he'd play that quartermaster role brilliantly because he has that unique charm to him. And he also has that slight kind of insane edge, which we've seen from like the Scarecrow in the Dark Knight trilogy. So you can have that kind of slightly twisted, like, here's a gadget, but it does this kind of vibe and stuff like that. So I think that would fit him absolutely perfectly. And I don't know, the other two are going to be listening into my suggestions now. And I know that George would be going, that would work perfectly. If Christopher Nolan was directing, Christopher Nolan is my director. I'm going to say that now. But we'll be moving on to a writer who I think could help write the film, has written a Bond film or helped write a Bond film, and would also play Moneypenny. And I think that's Phoebe Waller-Bridge. I think that unique charm, that kind of slight kind of giggly giddiness to her would make for a fantastic Moneypenny, but also part of the writing team keeping her back and stuff like that to fill in those jokes. That tongue-in-cheek nature between Moneypenny and Bond, I want to bring that back. I want Dan Stevens and Phoebe Waller-Bridge to have that kind of chemistry, which I honestly feel would happen on screen. I think there would be that kind of Moneypenny kind of wanting Bond, but also knowing the drawbacks and stuff like that, and Bond kind of playing into it, but not really going for it and stuff like that, knowing it's completely business and everything like that. I think that would be a fantastic dynamic. I think Phoebe Waller-Bridge, from all of her stuff that she's done from Fleabag, I know she's going to be in the new Indiana Jones film as well. Maybe we'll see her as a bit more of kind of femme fatale in that. But all of her acting so far, I think Moneypenny would be the best role that suit her. I almost put her as a Bond girl. I almost did. But then I thought, actually, no. Moneypenny is a role that suits her way better as that kind of side character role with that slight kind of humorous edge and that kind of cheekiness to it. So moving on to the allies. I've got two allies here. One, which is a returning ally, which I think was one of the best parts of No Time to Die, and I would like to see back, and that is Ana de Armas. Paloma was a fantastic character that was completely underused. We said it on the review. We thought that she was one of the best parts of the film in both the kind of non-spoiler and spoiler part. She had a fantastic energy, and she had a fantastic chemistry with Daniel Craig. And that's the only reason why I'm kind of like slightly drawing back, because it's like, will she have the same energy and the same kind of, will she have the same chemistry with Dan Stevens? Who knows? But if there was one side character I don't think was given kind of a full story or enough of it, I think it was Paloma. And I feel like Ana de Armas coming back in as an ally working for the CIA, working for the Cuban authorities would be fantastic. Because one of the things I want from this film is I want it to be global, or as global as we can have. And one of the people who I think could bring a lot to this is Iko Uways. Iko Uways, we haven't heard his name in a while now. I know him like from the Raid films, like Raid 1, Raid 2. He plays Rama, the main character. Fantastic martial artist, actor. He is just really good at punching things. And I think as an ally, having him as like an Indonesian agent or an agent from a different kind of country or continent even to aid Bond in this kind of plot, which I've got planned for it, I think that'd be fantastic. I think with the director as well, we can work in some phenomenal action scenes with him kind of popping off and Bond kind of in the background, just kind of doing his normal, okay, I'm going to shoot people or I'm going to actually have a proper punch up. But Iko Uways takes it to a completely different level. I feel like as an ally to Bond as well, you could see him just having a really good friendship with Dan Stevens. I think that would work chemistry-wise. I think that would be quite fun. Now, it's time to talk the director, and I'm glad that I went straight from Iko Uways straight into the director, because I'm going to be putting in the director from Daredevil. I'm going to be putting in Phil Abraham, the person who gave us the hallway sequence from Daredevil, the person who gave us some of the better episodes from like all of the kind of Marvel TV series when they did it back then. He directed Mad Men as well, so he has that suave kind of 50s feel to it. He knows how to get into that. He knows how to bring that just suaveness there, but he also has the action beats. He helped do Ozark. I've heard fantastic things about Ozark. He's worked on Jack Ryan TV series as well. So he has that perfect balance between the two, like as in kind of the directing side of things. He can work the action. He can also work the smooth kind of the sensual side of Bond and stuff like that. And Phil Abraham, he's not a director that immediately you go, oh yeah, Phil Abraham, like you immediately know who it is when I'm talking about him. He's one of those directors where when you look through his repertoire, you suddenly realize, oh my God, this person is literally been putting out kind of almost, he's been building up his CV just so he can do a Bond film. And I feel like it's going to happen one day. I feel like it will. Whether it's happening with kind of my plot and my script and my kind of dream casting for Bond, or whether it's going to be just a completely different Bond and stuff like that. But I feel like Phil Abraham at some point will direct a Bond film, because all of his kind of repertoire before now has all gone towards making a Bond film. So it would only make sense if he kind of completed it all and did that. Moving on to the theme song. The theme song, I want it to be called Shatterglass, just to start off with. I'm not the biggest fan of the trend. And even though You Know My Name is like my favorite Bond song, I prefer Bond songs that kind of have the title in them and stuff like that, are targeted at the film and everything like that. That is just my personal preference. I feel like when they start to go a little bit off track, it sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. Whereas if you go, oh yeah, it's Goldfinger, it's fun, but you're naming it after the character, so therefore I think the character has to be in there. I want Rag and Bone Man to do the Bond song. And the Bond song, with the Bond song, I want it to be soulful, but I also want it to be kind of not poppy, but kind of that rock nature added into it. Rag and Bone Man has been putting out kind of, he started off with rap music, he's gone into soul music, he's done club music, he's done dance music, he's done rock music, he's worked with orchestras. He has one of the greatest kind of voices of the current generation of singers and stuff like that. He's one of the only voices I'll listen to on the radio at the moment. That's kind of how bad the situation is with modern music, in my own personal opinion. And if you want to just kind of listen to some of his songs that could be kind of immediately transferred into a Bond song, me and Chris, we had a chat last night before recording this, and we were talking about various different people who could sing Bond songs and everything like that. My second choice would have been The Weeknd, to go for kind of that really, really modern vibe. But we put Rag and Bone Man's song Skin, and we played it over the top of the Quantum of Solace title sequence, and it fits so perfectly. You have no idea. It was absolutely fantastic. And that isn't even a song that I think would perfectly fit that kind of Bond vibe. I mean, you've got songs which he's done with like Calvin Harris, Giant. That's got some brilliant kind of trumpets in there and stuff like that that goes through. Human is a very kind of moody song and everything like that. He's worked with orchestras before. I really do think that he should do a Bond song. That big old soulful man, he should do a Bond song. I want the actual theme of the song as well, so the title sequence to be themed around stained glass coming to life. I don't think it's something they've done before. I know they've worked with glass before in Skyfall, or was it Spectre? I can't remember, one of those two. They worked with like Bond shooting glass and like the mirrors shattering and stuff like that. I want it to be stained glass, like kind of that feel, because it's going to be shatter glass, and I want that to be kind of, yeah, that kind of vibe and that kind of feel. For the soundtrack to work with Rag and Bone Man, I have got Rupert Gregson Williams, who, once again, people are going, who's that? What's he composed and stuff like that? He's composed for The Crown. He's composed for Wonder Woman, like Aquaman. And as much as you may not like those films, I mean, Wonder Woman was better than Aquaman, obviously, but the soundtrack and score to those films were really good, really epic, and really worked. But then you've got films like Hacksaw Ridge, which he also did. And you've got The Crown and kind of the grandeur, the majesty that comes with that. If you look through his catalogue of songs and stuff like that, he's got such a range that he can work with. I think it would work. I really do. And I personally think it's a good choice. It's an outsider choice. It's obviously not one of the obvious ones, or someone who's done a Bond theme before being brought back and stuff like that. But if we're looking for someone completely new, I feel like Rupert Gregson Williams has a more complete catalogue than a lot of other people, especially with the stuff that he's worked on previously, working with action beats and also working with kind of those soft, quieter moments and moving a theme through kind of a soundtrack and a score. So I put Rupert Gregson Williams in there. Now it's the final two parts. It is time for the pre-title sequence and the plot. So I'm going to go with pre-title sequence first. I haven't really got a big plan for the pre-title sequence. I got a bigger plan for the actual plot of the film. So for the pre-title sequence, I've got the word wingsuit written down. I know that they've kind of toyed with the idea of wingsuits in Mission Impossible, but I've always liked the shot of wingsuits with flares going off the back in the dark. I don't know if anyone's seen those videos of people going through mountains with wingsuits and kind of flares going off. It looks so cool when you watch it with like GoPro filming and stuff like that, them running through the mountains. I think that would be a really cool kind of opening to the Bond film with like the flares going off and then the flares going dark as they come in closer to their target. I want Bond and the team going after a wanted terrorist. I want one of the members of the team or multiple members of the team being left for dead at some point within this. They're on the mission, they get shot, Bond can't save them, or they kind of get hauled away and stuff like that, captured, whatever. And I want the fact that it's very clearly obvious that they were tipped off that this terrorist would kind of be there and be vulnerable, where actually the terrorist is either not there or very prepared for them being there. And the terrorist is actually maybe possibly in a different place. The terrorist attack that they were planning actually happened, and I wanted to go into the sequence knowing that the mission had failed. They lost lives, the mission had failed, the tip-off was wrong. Those are the key points that I want there. Because the main plot of the film isn't going to be revolving around this terrorist. It's going to be revolving around what happens to the people when they're left and abandoned and left to die on these missions. So the plot of the film is an undercover cell of spies that have been abandoned and left to die on their missions are given a second chance at life by Madame Shatterglass and her organization. She goes into and keeps track of various different spy networks as she is an ex-spy herself, and she recruits ex-spies who are basically left for dead and helps her own mission and her own goals. Her objective is to hold the world leaders and spy agencies at ransom for the information that the spies gave her. So obviously all these spies will have these little nuggets of sensitive information that they have obtained over the years that they have kept to themselves. They're obviously sworn to secrecy. Now that they've been left and abandoned by their own spy organization, could be any in the world. Could be the British one, could be the American one, could be just like anywhere in the world. Literally name a country, their spy agency has left them for dead. They've got sensitive information they can hold against their own government. The government doesn't realize that they're dead. They think that, oh yeah, they're dead. They're not going to give away that information. They're dead. How are they going to pass on that information? And Madame Shatterglass comes in, basically saves their life at the last moment, and will basically take that information and hold the world leaders at ransom. The threat is that she will cause tensions between the world countries and bring it to a boiling point with the secrets that she's able to obtain. Bond's personal struggle with the film is to do with Shatterglass saving his life on a mission. I want it to be kind of a clear point that like he's meant to go in and clean up a mission afterwards. He gets out of there, he goes back in, and he gets his own life saved, thinking that he's chasing down this terrorist cell when actually the real threat is Shatterglass. And that she saves his life, or someone from Shatterglass organization saves his life, and he slightly believes their message of holding the world leaders accountable for the missions that he go on. He knows that the mission at the start that he went on failed because a tip-off was wrong. The terrorists still got away with it, and people died because of it. He wants to hold the government accountable, whereas normally it's the people on the mission who are held accountable. So there's a slight kind of like personal struggle in there because he believes that they should be more cautious when going forward. They know that it is a risk that they have to take and stuff like that. But the fact that innocent people are dying and also the information is wrong in the first place, it wasn't double, triple checked or anything like that. It's just a hunch or even a tip off. That's big for him in this mission. And he just doesn't agree with the method of it in the end. Holding the world at ransom, holding these organizations, setting it to the brink of war. That's just not Bond's style. That's not what he wants to go for. He'd rather have a personal conversation and kind of ask his team to get their act together instead of holding them hostage with the information that he knows about his own government and his own secrets that he holds. That's going to be kind of the set of the film. So you've got Emma Thompson as Madame Shatterglass. You've got Peter Asbeck as a henchman who is an ex-spy from maybe the Danish organization. Then you've got multiple different other kind of side villains who maybe get a little bit less time from various different spy agencies over the world. I don't want it to be a big spy agency thing. I just want it to be kind of Shatterglass as this kind of little shadow organization, this little shadow cell of spies that have been left abandoned and die. So main points there: Dan Stevens. I want Daniela Melhia as like the main Bond girl. Charles Dance, Cillian Murphy, Phoebe Waller-Bridger as the kind of free helping. Anna de Armas and Iko Uways as allies. Phil Abraham as my director. Rag & Bowman doing the theme and the soundtrack by Rupert Gregson Williams. Awesome.
Okay, that was Tate's pitch to the Bond film. There's a lot to talk about there. Obviously, it was 20 plus minutes. We hadn't seen any. I'd seen a little bit of what he'd put. I'd seen a couple of names, but we hadn't listened to the whole context of it. So, as I said, we've not done this before. We don't really know how to go into it. We're not going to dissect it point by point because that would just be a repeat. So, I want to ask you, Chris, was there? And I mean, let's just talk about Bond because I think the Bond should be
that's the
the
big
key
one we need
conversation.
to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned Shayla on our Casino Royale video, or whether we were before or after recording, and spoke about not Dan Guest.
Dan Stevens.
He was from Dan Stevens from The Guest. That was it. So I've still not seen The Guest. It's been on the shelf behind me for like 8 years now. And I'm very curious about that pick because I think he's one of the names on a lot of people's lists. And I think, again, because I've not seen it, I know he's got the look, he's got the blue eyes. He has, I think, the style, and I don't know it's whether an age thing. I think that'll be interesting when the three of us speak about our Bonds tonight, is what does happen there. But I think Dan's a solid pick for it, to be fair.
As I say, is that like a descriptive of Bond that he has blue eyes? Because obviously I've got that so ingrained in my mind from the whole, ending of No Time to Die. I guess we can talk about some aspects of the ending from that film. I think it's a solid bet. You see his name crop up on a lot of people's lists. I've only seen him as CGI Beast from that awful remake of Beauty and the Beast that I couldn't stand. So I haven't really seen him in anything else. I haven't seen him in any of the costume dramas because they're just not my thing. And I haven't seen The Guest. Maybe I should. I mean, if he does get cast as the new Bond, I guess I've got to do some of my homework to see what he's been in beforehand. But I think it's a solid pick. I mean, has he done action before? Is The Guest a bit of action in there, or?
I think The Guest is I think he may have done one or two of the things, but I think the same way that Layer Cake was for Craig, like that unofficial audition, I think that's what a lot of people describe The Guest as, that you've kind of got a ready-made Bond in waiting. So I've not seen Massa. I have seen like Beauty and the Beast. Looks very different in that. But I think I've seen him in a couple of other things. It's just escaping my mind. But I think because he's sort of off the grid, it actually probably gives him more chance in real life that he's like not. He's not an A-lister, and we know they don't necessarily want or have never wanted an A-lister at this point in time. But as well as talking about the Bond, I'm going to bring up Anna de Armas. We know Tate's obviously a big fan, not just from Bond, Knives Out as well. One thing I'm going to say, I don't know if it's set in the same world as Craig's Bond if Paloma's coming back, or if it's like a Judi Dench M type thing.
Well, it depends if she was called the same name in the film. I don't know if he specifically mentioned that she would be returning as the same character, because then that's going to kind of muddy the waters a little bit as to whether it's a... I mean, it would have to be a reboot, like just, not going into specifics about the ending of No Time to Die, but people should have seen the film by now. You physically can't have this be set in the same continuity with things that transpired at the end of that film, but having her character return. I mean, I loved her in No Time to Die. It was kind of a shame that she did only have 10 minutes, 10 great minutes. She did steal, the show in that part that she was in. And I would like to see her as a main Bond girl, but she's here returning as an ally again. So I'm assuming that she would be the same character in this instance.
Yeah, I think so. And we're also going to talk about Emma Thompson because we have to. Straight away. If I do have people at home, if anyone watched the 90s Spider-Man show with Madame Web, that's all I can think of throughout Tate's presentation. Who was, I think, in a Pop Funko. There's a bit of marketing happening. That's the class Spider-Man series. You can watch Disney Plus if you've never seen it. But Emma Thompson as Madame Shatterglass. Right, I've not read the Flamey books. And I think Shatterhand was the rumoured title at some point for No Time to Die. It was never going to happen. But I think it may be Blofeld's pseudo name or something in the book for you and twice. So Bond aficionados, Fleming readers, please comment. I don't know if Tate's in it, that the Shatterhand something is something that has been around with Bond. So getting the sort of Shatterglass thing is quite interesting. And also the if we could ever get a song to the #1 streaming in the UK that's called Shatterglass, then something has happened. But yeah, I've not picked a title of mine. I'm just going to say that now. I've not picked a one, and I couldn't even think one if I tried.
I think when Tayte was sort of, because Tayte gave me like a rough outline for this weeks ago. I mean, he has changed it considerably since then, but he mentioned that when he was considering the villain, he wanted like the antithesis to M. He wanted basically a villainous M, and he was talking about maybe casting. Oh God, the name escapes me now. Who plays Jason Statham's mom in the Fast and Furious films? Helen Mirren. Like he was going to cast her potentially. Obviously, ended up going with Emma Thompson. I think she's a solid actress, but when I think of Emma Thompson, I always think of Harry Potter. I know she's done Shakespeare stuff. I know she's, an immense actress. She's got, a huge variety of stuff. Or I think of Nanny McPhee. I think of like sort of like childhood
Cruella, she's
kind
great.
of.
She's
or
great
Cruella.
in Cruella.
I still haven't seen that film, but the kind of Disney palatable kind of pantomime villain or quirky character kind of thing. So I don't know if she'd have the intensity to play like an all-out villain because she is so homely and everything. Like if you see Love Actually, she's just really nice, like a really nice person in that. Or if she does play a villain, it's more from the very overly theatrical and not to be taken seriously kind of villain, which is fine if that's the tone that you're going for in your film. I think I love Charles Dance, by the way, as M. Like I was even considering Charles Dance for mine. I didn't go with him in the end. And you got some interesting casting choices in there too. Cillian Murphy as Q and Phoebe Waller-Bridge as Moneypenny. The ones that my hackles went up a little bit was the casting of the Bond girls because they are exceptionally young compared to Dan Stevens. I think Anya Taylor-Joy is 25, and was it Daniela Melhia from the Suicide Squad? I think she's 24. So there would be quite a considerable age difference there. But, there has been age differences in the Bond films before. But that was the only thing that was kind of sticking out to me as a bit of a cause for concern. Both fantastic actresses in their own right, phenomenally talented. But they've got to be paired right with Bond, especially for a first outing, So I think that was probably one of the only things that I would flag up. What did you think of the director with Phil Abraham?
Well, I was going to mention, so I'm familiar with a lot of the TV shows he's worked on, but I know he's never done a film. So I don't want to shot on Tate's opinion. I just haven't seen it enough. I mean, you know what I'm like with Bond, right? I was really savage on what was his name, Danny Boyle, and that's one that's directed films for 20 plus years. So TV to film is a very interesting dynamic because obviously I know I love No Time to Die. Kerry Fukunaga had obviously done True Detective. However, he'd also done at least Beast No Nation, and he was also signed on for Masters of the Air, which is obviously coming out next year. So TV is an interesting one. I think TV directors can do film, but then you kind of said something earlier to me as well, which is, you can also get, HBO on the BIS comes around having Game of Thrones. So Phil Taylor, who would then go on to do iconic films such as Thor: The Dark World and Terminator Genesis. So
I forgot he did Genesis as well. Yeah, bloody hell!
I think he's done the Sopranos prequel that just came out, which they've announced actually is going to be a TV prequel series, which is bonkers. But yeah, I'm just going to add in music. You know me, I know nothing about music. I thought Rag and Bone Man was the Scatman song, but apparently it's not. So my music knowledge is just best left unspoken about.
I mean, my knowledge of modern music isn't great at all. He does have a very good voice. The song Human is sort of like the main one that I've heard, I think. I'm just trying to think if there's any other song that I may have heard. I think Human is sort of like the big one. And it's catchy. It's very bluesy. He does have a very, very strong voice. And I think that could work for a Bond song. Obviously, you need more of the orchestration of a Bond soundtrack behind him. And Rupert Gregson Williams, would be the composer for that. He's done some solid scores. He does seem very much a composer where if you can't get Hans Zimmer, we get in one of his proteges because we want a soundtrack that sounds like Zimmer, but he's too expensive or he's off scoring Dune Part 2 or something like that. Let's get him in. So, I mean, he's done some great music. I ain't going to take it away from the guy, but it'd be interesting to hear his input if you would have more of that Zimmer sound, perhaps. And I know he didn't do the music for Mission Impossible Fallout. I think that was Lorne Balfe. That was it. Who, again, was one of those. And it sounds like the Dark Knight Rises score, doesn't it? So, if you were looking for more of that sort of contemporary Zimmer harder edge soundtrack to the film, then I guess it could be a good bet for it.
Definitely. I don't know if that's everything we can say on the film, just because I know we've got to go through me and yours as well. And again, just because we've never done this for people at home, let us know your thoughts on Tate's film, what you want to see from it, what you think is interesting. Again, Dan Stevens is one of those names that's been around for a couple of years, so do comment your thoughts and keep them coming through. What's going to happen now? Chris doesn't know my picks. I've got mine here on the screen. We are going to have images that are going to come up. These are going to get edited as well in post, guys, so you'll get a chance to see them as well. But I'm kind of going in a similar order to Tate. What I actually have to open up with is the pre-title sequence, only because this actually has an input onto how my story is coming together. So I'm just going to read this out loud. If we had a budget, we could do animations and we would be rich, but that's not how it works. But essentially, my film's going to obviously gun barrel. I don't even need to excuse that with Money Bond. The pre-title sequence, because to me, I speak so much about the Brosnan films, how much I love them, how important they are to me growing up. And obviously, I love No Time to Die. That was something different. We got to see the villain for a change. I like them doing different things, but you want to set the tone. I will say, as much as I love No Time to Die, mine isn't a very long opening credits as well. So, very short pitch. I'm reading this off a notepad. The film's going to open with M in an office, and he's been briefing 007 on a video call in a mission. And essentially, what's going to happen when this brief, a bit like Ralph Fiennes at the end of No Time to Die, it's like a Zoom call, isn't it, when he's on the plane to him. And anyway, this M is going to turn around and he's going to leave this room, and he's actually in the Sydney Opera House attending a show. And I've just realised that this scene is also looking far too familiar to something that came out last year now.
Yeah, me too.
He's briefed 007 to go in. He's got his license to go in. He wants him to kill this person. It's then going to cut to very Nolan. Sorry, not just because of Tenet, actually. One thing I wanted to have an approach for this, and I'm going to have to say, is pre-title sequences are important to me. Stuff like Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises, I guess I could add. We're going to get we're going to get the character fully messed up, coming off a plane, starting this mission, where he's going to have to get into this location to bump off the guy which he's been instructed to do using his license to kill. And it's a short sequence. It's going to be him doing spy work, him not doing Batman Arkham Asylum shit, but he's staying in the shadows, he's being a spy, he's killing people, he's breaking in. And then it's going to end with him planting a bomb in this building, in this office. And then essentially what's actually happened is, and again, I'm not a writer, so let's leave this here. It's going to come out that actually that wasn't James Bond on the mission. This is one of the villains of the film, and he has just put a bomb in the Sydney Opera House, and he's killed M and 007, leaving it for a big plot. It's not really a plot twist, but it's hard to say about the cast, so I'm trying to do the title sequence first. It might make more sense in a bit, but essentially, the guy's going to take off the mask at the end, and it's the villain. It's not your new James Bond. We'll get to him. But M is dead. 007 is dead. Essentially, there's room for promotion. I've just done what Skyfall and No Time to Die have done in less drastic circumstances. But anyway, I'm going to leave that there so I can start bringing this into it, so it might make a bit more sense.
Yeah.
Right, so first off, Bond. This is hard to do because you want to avoid the bookies list, but at the same time, you are drawn to it. And there's an actor who is incredible, who is a big name, and unfortunately is just about to be in a Marvel film, which is something not that I don't want to see, but I wanted to have the avoiding franchise type person. So I've gone for Richard Madden.
Up
on the screen now. Now, obviously, so many people are familiar from as Robb Stark from Game of Thrones. I think he's an actor that did The Bodyguard, which was a Bond type audition. And he's just been cast in the Eternals, which is really frustrating because I was going to go with Jack Lowden, who was one of the pilots in Dunkirk. I just don't think he's ready yet. And I think Richard Madden, he's in his late 30s. He's the perfect age. And I think the big thing, which I think me and you are both going to probably say, these are going to be episodic. It's not going to be, there's going to be continuity, but it's not going to be a definitive character piece like the Craig era. And I've got to get that out of the system first. But in this pre-title sequence with the death of 007, you can literally just bring him in. It's like, this is James Bond. He's the new 007. No Daniel Craig killing a guy doing that. This is essentially a lovely way to reboot it. as less sequentially important as possible with he's replacing a man that's been killed. And obviously we have a new M. We have an M that dies, which isn't Ralph Fiennes, and a new M that's going to obviously take over. So Bond's going to be joining at the same time as an M.
Who is it, George? Who is it? Who is it?
The M that died is Kenneth Branagh. So it's a very small role for him at the moment. And the new M, which I'm very excited about, is Brendan Gleeson.
Awesome. Yeah.
This really threw me this morning. So again, Kenneth Branagh, very small role playing M, but the key is Brendan Gleeson, because the one thing I love Ralph Fiennes so much in these films, I don't think he's had the treatment, but I'm just treating this as a full reboot. I don't think he's had the legacy of Judi Dench where he can carry him over. I think that'd be weird if he did that twice in a row for 2M. So it's a really unfortunate, sad to see you go, Ralph. But we're going to get one of your In Bruges co-stars to come in. I just think Brendan Gleeson's got a presence. Every time he's talking down at someone, shouting from a desk, I see this man being the perfect M. And with him being newer to the role, he's a tougher military sort of bastard type. And I think he'd be the perfect guy to be putting Richard Madden's Bond in his place. And again, Kenneth Branagh is just a lovely little moment, because he's going to come back into this video to talk about later on as well for obvious reasons.
Okay.
So they're the M's. And again, the story mode is really different. If you can't follow this at home, I'm apologizing because I'm confusing myself as well. So now I'm going to go to the Bond girl. And I'm only picking one for this because the Americans are going to be involved. Because when I get to talk about the villains, it's going to be involving American. But I picked Dakota Johnson as the Bond girl for this film, just the one from me. She's obviously in all the 50 Shades films, but she's started doing other films like The Lost Daughter. She's starting to really do dramas. And if anyone's seen the classic Ellen DeGeneres show, she is the reason the Ellen show no longer exists. It was Dakota Johnson destroying Ellen on the sofa, which kickstarted all the events over the last few years. So I think she's become a very talented actress. And I think she's in like the early 30s and Richard Madden's late 30s. So the age gap was something I really took into account.
Yeah.
There's a couple of actors I'd have loved to have seen, but the age to me just didn't work. So I had to politely decline them. Not that they're asking. But Dakota Johnson will be the main Bond girl. And I'm going to do the villains last. You need a new Q and a new Moneypenny. Now, I had so much fun coming up with the Q for this because, again, I think Ben Whishal's stupendous. There's Q. I think he's unfortunately too big to be doing it for X amount of years. And I like to bring in an actor that can do it for 30, 40 years, which is probably not ever going to happen again. But I picked Harry Melling, also known as Dudley Dursley from Harry Potter. So
that's good pick.
He's no stranger to small roles in franchises. He's done it before. And I think he's got a very fascinating career coming up. I think he's he's in the Tragedy of Macbeth coming out. He's been in so many films over the last few years, so I can see the lab coat on him. He's got a very interesting sort of face. I think because obviously when he was younger, he was quite big. He's obviously dropped off distinct facial features from that.
Yeah.
So he was my pick, and then for Moneypenny, Jessie Buckley, I've picked. She's a very talented actress coming through. Whether she should be too big to do a desk role. In the future, I think she's going to be in the Game of Thrones show. I could be wrong, but I think she'd be a great Moneypenny. And again, age is quite important. These are all in their sort of 30s as well, so it matches Dan Stevens in the same way. Sean Connery, was a similar age to Moneypenny back at the beginning of the film. So that is them. Only one ally for me for this one. As I said, this is set in Sydney. Bond has never been to Australia, and I think that's something you want. Obviously, you need London. But it's never been in Australia. They've had the release date delayed so long. I thought, let's reward the Australians for their patience. Let's do an open set piece at the Sydney Opera House in the same way that there was not enough went to the Millennium Dome, I guess you have to call it, from back then. And I think they'd be down for it. And if there's one Australian man and he's not playing villain in my film, I've got Ben Mendelssohn playing an ally.
Yeah, there he is.
It's so easy to look at him and think he's born to play a Bond villain. And then I kind of had this sort of golden eye take that we really miss Hagrid, Robbie Coltrane. That he was in 2 films. He had such an incredible presence in them. Obviously, he didn't come back after, wasn't it, for obvious reasons that he died in it. But I want to bring in an actor who could pop up every few films or every film or something and just have this 5 minutes where he steals the entire film. And I think Ben Mendelsohn's one of the best actors. Not working, say, in terms of having a presence, having an impact. I think you could bring in Ben Mendelsohn for 5 minutes to bounce off Richard Madden or even to M or something like that. He's the guy that you want in a Bond film. So Ben Mendelsohn's coming in. And this leads me to the villain, which is where it's all going to get a bit maybe messy, a bit predictable. Who knows? So obviously, I've said, at the opening of the film, we've got the villain doing the terrorist attack that kills M and 007. I've just realized that 007 can't not be in the same room. He's in the same building, but he's dead anyway, which obviously gave Rob Stark his news shot, King of the North and all that. But I'm picking Corey Hawkins, and plot twist, Kenneth Branagh is still alive. M is actually the villain of the film, but Corey Hawkins, who you'd have seen in Straight Outta Compton, who played Dr. Dre, Tragedy Macbeth as well. He was in the Heights this year. Very, very talented actor. Again, younger actor, physical. Need him to be. We haven't had a physical Bond villain in such a long time. And I was also thinking back to the Americans as well. This isn't some weird hatred because I keep slagging them off every Bond video we do. Can you guess the last time I had an American Bond villain, like actor? And I'm not like doing this as like
an American villain.
If you just had to, trust me, it'll blow your mind.
Okay, I know it's not the Craigs. I'm going to the Brosnans now. Oh God, no, it wasn't any of those, was it? No.
This is it. License to Kill. It's License to Kill. It was the last time I had an American Bond villain.
Damn.
And I just thought we need Corey Hawkins again. I need someone to match the physique. I don't want to do a GoldenEye. I don't want another 00 being the villain.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that. But this guy is part of the American. He's an American spy, and he's obviously betrayed them. And Kenneth Branagh is the mastermind behind this. Again, he was previously M, so you have to think, he is the head of the Secret Service. How has he got that high? How has he betrayed them? How did he fake his death? He'd also obviously killed off the previous 007 as well. And it's a lovely way to bring him back. So I'm going to basically try and get into the plot really quickly. It's not as detailed as Tate. So I'll just put, following the murder of M and other 00 agents, James Bond is recruited into the program as 007. His first mission is to investigate the mole in the US Secret Service, which takes him back to the place where his mentor was killed. ... Simple as, but his mentor's still alive. I think this is what they were originally going to do with GoldenEye. There was always a rumor, wasn't there? They wanted like a mentor figure.
That's right.
So
yeah.
It wasn't my intentions for this, but it naturally came because, again, Sir Kenneth Branagh, a big favorite on this channel. He's been a villain in Tenet. This is far from that. This is him pulling the strings. And I'm just going to say the film will end with obviously Bond having to kill him. Bond also has to kill off Corey Hawkins' character as well. But the big takeaway for me is that when he does kill Sir Kenneth Branagh, there will be a ring on his finger with an octopus logo on it.
Oh,
and
we're setting it up.
That is all you're going to have. It's not going to be, you're not going to cut to a post-credit scene. None of that. It's just going to be when he's killed him, he's going to get the ring, and they don't know what it means.
Mm-hmm.
So it's slowly introducing Spectre to be in this new era.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not pitching a 5 film. They were behind everything. I'm just pitching as simple as it was back then. There is a villainous organization, and they've already infiltrated the British Secret Service, the American Secret Service. Again, Kenneth Branagh, head of MI6, and Corey Hawkins, who's in that. He's not Felix Leiter as well, by the way. No Felix Leiter, new American agent who betrayed them. So, yeah, that's as simple as the plot's going to be. And I have to get into the director, theme, and soundtrack. No surprise for anybody whose name I've mentioned already a couple of times. Directed by Sir Kenneth Branagh.
Nice.
At this point in time, he's the favourite to win Best Film with Belfast at the Oscars. It's sweeping the festivals it's been at. And obviously he's a thespian, he's a British director, and I know he's not done massive action films. I know Thor's the biggest one, and that's very much, he's probably one of the few directors that got to have an input, I'd argue, and with those films that it was very Shakespearean.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously Bond's not Shakespeare, but I would like to see him get a go. And I think he's like a national treasure, and also the fact that he could play not just M, but the villain and director is probably something no other Bond person could ever do. So let him have his go in the sun, smash out a Bond film, and accompanying him on his journey. Again, music isn't my forte, so I've picked Lana Del Rey to be the artist to do the theme, because when that film came out, the Baz Luhrmann one, The Great Gatsby, she's the greatest song in that, which I really liked. So I thought, let's get her in for a Bond film. And soundtrack, we bring back Super Hans Zimmer, of course.
No, look at him there.
There's, only because No Time to Die, I think I said it on our review, I was surprised at how good that score was, and I'm a massive Hans Zimmer fan. I thought he was coming in last minute, like Wonder Woman, but to get something really quick and generic. But on listening to it, there are so many. Yes, he borrowed obviously elements of On a Majesty's Secret Service, but there are so many things he was able to do, like the final ascension with Bond at the end. Matera, yes, it delves into it, but he still gets his stamp on it, the Cuban Bond theme as well. And I think I would love to see Zimmer get the chance to do a new Bond, just as a reward for coming in so late on No Time to Die. And logistically, I don't think it's out of the question either. And I think that's been the goal for my whole list, is that logistically it could all work in terms of ages, eras, filming, cast ages, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's everything I can say. It feels really nervous to do these. I don't know why.
Let's say it puts you in a vulnerable state, doesn't it?
I think I don't want to say mine's complex, but it's like, because I know that it's got the switcheroo with M, so I'm a bit all over.
No, that's good.
How do I say it to people? But yes, go.
And I think because you open with the villains, right? You mentioned from your pre-title sequence, so that's much more different from anything we've really seen in a lot of the Bond films. Is opening in that way, so it's a good switcheroo, and it's that slow reveal of the new Bond, which I think is very important when you get to a new Bond actor. So yeah, I really like that switcheroo concept, and obviously Kenneth Branagh returning at the end as well and directing it. I think that's a great choice for a director. Yeah, I was trying to think if he's done like any other action films, but I think Thor is sort of like the big one, isn't it? And he's had some blockbusters come out as well with the new take on Poirot, which I really enjoyed. I don't know if many other people enjoyed that film, but I certainly did. I thought it was great. And Richard Madden as Bond, I do think he is one of the bookies' favorites. And you're right, I wanted to try and avoid that. And, I kept thinking about it long and hard, but you do keep going to that list, don't you? It just naturally happens. I think that's a solid choice. I think he's got that. You want an actor that, everyone's going to fawn over, that does have that, raw masculine quality to them, and a proven terrific actor. He was amazing in Game of Thrones, and even recently he was like a bit part, but really great performance in 1917 at the very end of that film as well. That always stuck out to me as well. So I think that's a great choice. Bond girl as well. I've only ever seen her in Social Network. Thank God I've never watched any of the 50 Shades of Grey movies at the moment, but I think kind of like Twilight, and we're seeing that with Kristen Stewart as well with the new Spencer film that's coming out, which she looks absolutely tremendous in. I haven't seen that film yet, so I can't vouch for her performance, but she looks great from the trailer that I've seen. It's that we need to break away. Like, these people can actually act, whether they've been in a bad film, bad trilogy, bad saga of films, they can actually really act. And I could see those two together as well. Sort of that visual chemistry that we've talked about in the previous Bond films when we watched them is very important, I think. And the ages make sense as well. That's a big thing. Go into the music real quick. I don't know if I've heard a Lana Del Rey song. I probably have, but again, my knowledge of modern music, I'm so sorry, guys. My knowledge lies with the 80s and maybe the 90s. But Zimmer returning, I mean, I loved his soundtrack to No Time to Die. Really, really solid. And, I had my reservations about sort of, resurrecting certain themes, but that ain't his fault. And the reorchestrated versions of those songs is absolutely tremendous. So, if you can get Hans Zimmer himself to do it, absolutely get him in and see what he can do next. We've seen a lot of his scores to, he's done sequels before with Pirates of the Caribbean, with the Batman films, and just seeing how from film to film, he just takes that soundtrack and develops it even more. And, he always wants to be outside the box with his score. So I think that's tremendous. And it's interesting because we didn't compare notes on this thing really at all. And we've picked a very similar location for the beginning of our film, certainly. I don't know if we were just in the same mindset, or I think we were trying to think of locations that haven't appeared yet. And it's very difficult because there's been 25 Bond films. There's only so many countries in the world, and they've been to a lot of them already. And I think that was sort of like the main one that jumped out to me. And then goddamn Mendelssohn. I mean, I assumed you were going to cast him, so that's why I asked, because I was going to cast him in a very similar role actually, but I've deferred to you. You can have the Mendelssohn, and I've cast someone else. But just know when we get to mine, deep down, Mendelssohn's the man for the job. And I actually think my favorite casting out of all of them was Dudley Dursley as Q. That I would have never have thought of that, but as soon as you've mentioned that, I can't think of anyone better for that now. He's really proven himself. I think he was in his Dark Materials TV series, the new one that came out on BBC. He was in
Queen's Gambit. I've not
he was
seen,
in
but he's in that.
the Ballad of Buster Scruggs as well, which he was really great in. I think that was like the third segment of that film. He's really, really proven himself, and he's an actor that's cropping up more and more now. And you can't even imagine how he was in Harry Potter now. Like he's so far removed from what he was in those Harry Potter films, and physically as well. So I think that was my favorite casting. The one person I didn't know was the one who you cast as Moneypenny. She looks like I recognize her from something, but I can't quite place it. Is she a TV actress more than anything?
So she has done a couple of films, and I think she's Irish. Is she going to be in House? She may be in the new Game of Thrones show. I'm just trying to think really quickly if you may have seen anything. So you'd have seen her in that film you and Tate last year. I'm thinking of Ending Things. I think she may be the main character with red hair.
Yeah.
So
She was
I know
really
she
good.
was in. Yeah, she was in Fargo, Chernobyl. I'm thinking of Ending Things, and then Wild Rose was the big breakthrough, I believe. So she's getting very big, and this is really hard in Moneypenny because as like a Bond romantic, you want someone that can stick around.
Yeah,
and it's that career trajectory. Like Dudley Dursley's getting massive. I'm not going to sit here and say I don't see him winning Oscar. I could see him signing on and be like, I'm willing to do a couple of days a year, and I think sort of jump back to mine. I really want to quickly say as well that I'm not. Yes, M's got a subplot in mind, and maybe it's a bit of mindfuckery or whatnot, but it's more of an origin for this 007 iteration. It's not a let's have the MI6 crew on a Scooby-Doo mission together. They are in their roles, and they're staying in those roles. And I'd say a bit like No Time to Die in Absolute Truth. Yes, Q was extended, but we didn't get a lot of Moneypenny, which was a shame. But at the same time, we kind of what happened last time, and the M stuff. I just when Brendan Gleeson hit him, I was like, how has he never been in a Bond film? And I think that was my initial thing. Like everything he's ever been in, it would have been a bit too on the nose if I did, like Domhnall Gleeson being a villain with Brendan Gleeson in it as well. That'd have been a bit too on the nose. But
I was just thinking of like Mad Eye Moody when he's like shouting at Harry Potter and everything. So yeah, he definitely commands presence, and he's good at sort of like the tender moments as well. But he can be a very stern actor. Well, he can be any kind of actor, really, can't he? He's done comedies, he's done all kinds of things. He's so versatile. But yeah, no, I think that's a tremendous chat. When you picked Kenneth Branagh, I did think like he was here to stay. So you fooled me with the switcheroo right from the off, which is exactly what you want. So yeah, no, full marks from that. I'd watch that as a Bond film. I'd be quite happy having that be the 26th Bond film. Okay, so now it's my time in the hot seat. Be gentle. As I said, I was very rushed with this. So, and this is why they don't pay me to be a writer or a casting director or anyone like that. But here we go. So very similar. We've picked the same location, which is amazing for our pre-title sequence. Basically, I was just thinking, where has it been filmed? I was thinking of Iceland, and I was like, well, no, because we had a whole film there with Die Another Day. So unfortunately, we can't go back there. So pre-title sequence, there is an attempted assassination of a world leader and bombing of Sydney Opera House. You can see where this is going, like Tenet, can't you? I've put the opera will be something thematically consistent with the film itself. Like I want to do that whole film studies thing where you go, oh, that it spells out the whole plot of the film. I don't know what the opera is. I didn't get that far. I don't know what the themes of the film are, but you can pick something. Any of you opera aficionados out there, go crazy. I've got the plan goes awry and Bond chases down the assailant via speedboat out on Sydney Bay. I am kind of worried that it's sort of like delving into the world is not enough territory right here with the whole speedboat thing. But if you're in Sydney, you do the Opera House, you're right there in the bay. Make the most of that location. Open with an action scene. And during this whole plan, I want to keep Bond in the shadows, like you mentioned. Like he might be taking people out, like sort of getting them and like taking them into the shadows or something. Really bringing in that spy angle, kind of like the From Russia with Love opening with Red Grant, where it's all very darkly lit and in the shadows, and you've got some like banging opera music going on behind it. Bond manages to get to the bomber and stop the detonation. The assailant warns Bond that chaos shall reign before biting down on a cyanide capsule, and the Tenet links are complete with the cyanide capsule. We then go into our title sequence. I'm not going to give away who does the music just yet. So now we're going to go back and we're going to go through the cast on this thing. So basically what you said, I did want to try and think outside the box for this one. I really did. I was combing through my DVD shelf. I was trying to think of actors in the business at the moment. Most of the actors that I've cast were based on age, which really did help me sort of narrow it down. And you know, people might want a really younger Bond, like in their 20s or something, and I didn't want that. Bond's got to be a bloke, you know, he's got to be a man's man. So someone in their 30s with the knowledge of, you know, if they are going to continue this longevity wise, they need to age into the role. So maybe quite on the nose with this one, but I've gone with Henry Cavill because having seen this man in person in a tuxedo, that guy can pull off a suit. Like, he is Bond. When I saw him, you know, when you see him, he's like, that's Superman. And when I see that guy, I'm like, he is also Bond. We've seen him do a lot of spy films and related things before. I think he's actually got one coming up on Netflix. So this probably is the death toll of him ever being cast as Bond. But in my imaginary fantasy world where he can be cast as Bond, I think he would be absolutely tremendous. He's proven himself physically, you know, acting wise, he's great. He's been in The Witcher, spy things, you know, Man from U.N.C.L.E. and Mission Impossible Fallout recently, where he can also prove that he can play a villain. So there's many different sides to the character. Seeing him in person, you know, he's charismatic, he's charming, he's everything Bond needs to be. And it's mostly just the aesthetic as well. Is that shallow of me? I've picked him based just on how he looks essentially as Bond. I think he'd be tremendous, and I think he's definitely an actor that would grow into the role. And, you know, if you did start to go more into the thought-provoking Bond films. I mean, mine isn't a thought-provoking Bond film. I just want to say that I've gone traditional as anything, back to formula. Let's have some fun with it. But I do think he is an actor that could show that dramatic side as well. You look at the end of Man of Steel when he snapped Zod's neck and you just see him kind of break down. I do think he could pull it off. We then move on to sort of my main Bond girl. I do have two, and I did actually let slip who this was. I was thinking of the Australian connection, and I went with Margot Robbie. Tremendous actress, and again, a very multifaceted actress. She's proven that she can do action, from the likes of Suicide Squad as Harley Quinn. She also has real personality and real charm to her, and she's different in every single film she's in. You know, she's got mad personality as Harley Quinn, but also Wolf of Wall Street. When you remember from that film, she was very sassy, very headstrong. And then I forget the name of the film that came out. She was with Charlize Theron, and it was regarding, so it was based on a true story about a news network, wasn't it? Do you remember that came out a couple of years ago at the Oscars?
Came out last year. Oh my god, the name's escaped me.
It's going to drive me mad. I can search it up in a minute.
Bomb something. May have been
Bombshell, was it? Maybe?
Bombshell.
That was it.
That's it. Bombshell.
She delivers probably one of the most emotional performances I've ever seen from her career. It's a phone call where she breaks down that, you know, she had to do something in order to get a position in the job. So she's got the vulnerability, she's got the emotion, and she's just a tremendous actress. And again, call me shallow if you want, but she's absolutely stunning. And I think you need that from a Bond girl. And I think seeing the two together, you know, Henry Cavill and her, I think they would have really good chemistry with each other. And they just absolutely look the part. This might be a bit of a telling clue as to a slot that might be coming up later. But my Bond girl number two, this is also going to kind of function as an ally. I've gone with Lady Gaga. Kind of going with the Madonna route on this one, but maybe a bit more of a major role in this than Madonna's Verity, like the blink and you miss it cameo in that film. This was kind of a no-brainer for me. I guess I can sort of jump ahead to the main theme as well while I'm at it. I've also got Lady Gaga doing the music. I'm actually surprised that she hasn't done a Bond theme already. She's been around for a long time now. And they always go with someone contemporary. And obviously Lady Gaga still does have albums coming out. I think she released one not too long ago. She's still in the charts. She's still in the limelight, but maybe not as much as she used to be. And they always go with someone contemporary. So I don't know if they ever would, but one of the best female vocal talents in the music industry today. And this is coming from a guy who's not into modern music at all, but I still love the stuff that Lady Gaga puts out. She's very much in that sort of like pop bass, kind of like Madonna, you know, with that sound that you get from Die Another Day. But if you hear her do any rendition of whether it's a classical song, an opera song, she's kind of done it all. And she's absolutely got the chops to pull off a big, belting, bombastic Bond song. The female vocal was important to me as well, not to take anything away from Casino Royale, because, you know, my name was absolutely tremendous, but you know, you think of Bassie. I even think of like Tina Turner from Goldeneye. The female vocal for Bond, especially for a reboot, was really important to me with this one. I think she can absolutely do it. And of course, you know, I think Oscar nominated as well, wasn't she? For
one best song.
That was it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I forgot. The Star Is Born. That's what it's called.
Nominated for performance as well, which is incredible.
And you know, she's going to be in the new Gucci film. She's cropping up all over the place now, and she's a really great talent and fantastic actress. I'm imagining some kind of like dingy noir-esque bar or something in America. I've actually got a location in mind where it could be. I think she'd be absolutely tremendous. Okay, now we move on to the villains, and they'll sort of like play a big focal point in my actual plot outline. I've gone with two, and they could be a pairing. And one I want as more of a sort of Fiona Volpe kind of character because I love that dynamic with her character. And the other one is going to be sort of the antithesis of Bond. Could argue would be cast as a great Bond, certainly back in the day, maybe a few years ago now. My main villain, I've gone with Michael Fassbender. I wanted someone to go toe-to-toe with Henry Cavill, and I think both charming, you know, both look the part, but the villain equivalent. And this might be similar to Tate's in this regard, how, you know, he wanted like a villainous M. I thought it might be cool to have like a villainous Bond. And I know you've kind of had that with GoldenEye, but he is definitely part of this sort of like villainous organization. And to sort of side by side with him, maybe they could be a brother and sister thing. I don't know. Or they could just be part of the same organization. I've gone with Rebecca Ferguson as the Fiona Volpe kind of character. You could argue, I mean, she's in the Mission Impossible films and she basically serves as a Bond girl equivalent in the Mission Impossible film. So maybe I'm kind of wasting her as like a henchwoman villain kind of character, but she's played villains before. In Doctor Sleep, she is terrifying. And, you know, recently in Dune as well, not playing a villain, but absolutely fantastic actress. Easily one of my favorites in the business today. And sort of above those villains, sort of like the head of this villainous organization that I've got going on, maybe wouldn't crop up much in this, would maybe be a voice, you know, similar to yours, how you tease the films to come with like Spectre and everything like that. Very much in the shadows. I wanted someone who was unique, who's physically unique, not like cartoonishly theatrical or anything like that, but has real presence and is a fantastic actor as well. And I've gone with Tilda Swinton. You know, she's played villains before, very striking, very imposing, and very intimidating as well in the right role. So she's going to be kind of like the head of the villainous organization, which I'll get through when I get onto my plot synopsis. We're getting onto the main sort of like MI6 cast now. And this is probably my favorite casting out of all the ones here. So we're going to start with Moneypenny. I wanted someone who's headstrong, who's feisty, who can, you know, dish it out back to Bond. And also has proved that she can do, you know, genuine sort of like romantic sides to her in some of her roles as well. Maybe a very similar character here, but I have gone with Hayley Atwell as Moneypenny. I was watching clips of that original Captain America film, and my God, when she sees someone else, I think it's Natalie Dormer flirting with Captain America, you know, her hackles kind of go up and she kind of wants to protect her own, but she's also very headstrong and doesn't want to make direct advances to Captain America in that moment. I've basically just based it on that. I think she's absolutely tremendous. And I think she also is quite a devout feminist as well in real life. So I think that it wouldn't be like the put upon or overly flirtatious Bond with her. You could still have that flirting there, but I think she would have that sort of like feminine power to counter Bond's masculinity and be very no nonsense about it. So we move on to Q now, and I've gone completely in the opposite direction. I've gone for a much older one because I love that dynamic that Desmond Llewellyn had, especially when he was like towards the end of his career with the Bond films, that he had with Dalton and especially Brosnan. And it was more like a grandfatherly or fatherly dynamic that he had with him. So I've gone Mark Rylance. Again, very big actor, and you might consider him to be wasted in this role. Maybe that's the case, but he's such a likable actor. He's very endearing. He's very welcoming. And I do think he has that kind of, he could have the potential of that quirky attitude to him as well, kind of larger than life. We've seen him do animated things before and play a character like that with the BFG. I know that was like an animated film. Yeah, exactly. So that kind of kooky dynamic I think would be good, but he would also, I could imagine him taking someone under his wing kind of thing. And you'd listen to him and he's going to, you know, impart that wisdom onto someone else. And again, very similar with this one. My M, and there's no switcheroo, is Sir Kenneth Branagh. I was
even better.
exactly. You know, I was trying to think of, you know, phenomenal British talent, one that's proven and one that is going to have that presence. And I couldn't cast him as a villain because, again, I didn't want the links to Tenet to be too much. You know, I'll save that for my pre-title sequence. But how else can you introduce Kenneth Branagh? I mean, the guy's an absolute national treasure. I think he'd be a great M, whether it's in a switcheroo or whether he's just M all the way through the movie. And I think the one that sort of clinched the deal for me as well was when you got to meet them on the red carpet, and there was the picture that you had of Dame Judi Dench and Sir Kenneth Branagh next to each other, and I was like, that to me is like a visual representation of passing that baton on to the next M. I know we had Ralph Fiennes in between, but you know what I mean. I think he'd just be great. Okay, now we move on to the allies. I also had like Lady Gaga down as an ally, but I've already brought her up. Now, this is the one that I wanted Ben Mendelsohn for. So ideal casting is Ben Mendelsohn, but I didn't want to steal your thunder with that one. So I've gone for another Aussie actor in this one. Maybe wouldn't fit the bill. I've gone Chris Hemsworth. He's great. He does have like a comedy charm to him. You know, you see him do more comedy now, and especially in Thor Ragnarok, etc. Even in Ghostbusters, many people said that in that, you know, awful 2016 Ghostbusters film, he was the best thing in it. So I could see him getting some, you know, good quips in there with Henry Cavill. I think they're kind of a similar age as well, potentially as well. So I think that would work. Ideally, I want Ben Mendelsohn though, because I do think he'd be absolutely tremendous. I have cast a Felix Leiter in mind because I too wanted to sort of set an element of this film in America as well. This was really tough. I will say originally I had Brad Pitt, and I thought, you know, once again, going back to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I can't break away from it. But I changed my mind in the end. I don't know how I feel about this one. Might be a bit out of left field. I've got Matthew McConaughey.
Oh, lovely.
Might be a strange pairing, but I wanted to go for an actor that was older than Henry Cavill in this way. And I think there was like maybe like a 20-year age gap between Felix in License to Kill alongside Timothy Dalton. And I wanted that same kind of thing, but, you know, I can just imagine all right. Very American. And we've seen him do comedy things before, and he has got a natural charisma and chemistry, and I would love to see how that dynamic would work. This is where I've gone very, very exceptionally lazy, actually, with the music. So I've already done the title theme with Lady Gaga, and I'd want this person, proven track record with the Bond films before, to work with her and come up with a theme. And that is David Arnold. I mean, you know, he's just absolutely tremendous. He is the sound of Bond to me after John Barry, and I would love to see him return for another Bond soundtrack, especially working in collaboration. I'd love to see what he comes up with. Not to take anything away from the soundtracks that we've had before. I think the Mendes films, you know, fine soundtrack for those films, but lacked that Bond quality. I think that was brought back with Hans Zimmer. But very back to basics. My approach to this whole film is back to basics. Yeah. And again, very lazy, you know, push for time, sue me. Director, I'm also going back to basics with this one. The name escapes me, so I do apologize about that. I do think I had it written down, but I'm completing your hat trick there, George, with GoldenEye, into Casino Royale. Yeah, there we go. And directing this new one. He is getting up there a little bit now, but I think that, you know, he could absolutely do it. And can lightning strike? Well, I guess 3 times with this one. I would have to see, but I think that would be cool. It'd be a good sort of, you know, reunion as well with composer and director. But with a new cast and a fresh take that could, you know, inspire him to come up with something new perhaps, or go back to the stuff that's worked well before with GoldenEye and Casino. Because, you know, if you watched our top 10, they're way up there in terms of the list. So that's my cast. I'm going to quickly go through the plot right now. And this is where we get very cheesy and very terrible. A lot of this I have based actually on an early idea for, I think it was The Spy Who Loved Me. There was a bunch of drafts before they settled on what they actually did. So I've kind of cherry picked. For example, Sydney Opera House was an original idea for The Spy Who Loved Me. It was going to open with an assassination attempt on Queen Elizabeth, and Bond had to foil it at Sydney. But the main plot, especially around the villains, was an earlier concept for that film. So, and I've kind of written this like the Force Awakens title crawl. I do apologize. It was intentional. This is the one aspect of the film, by the way, as well, that I've continued on from No Time to Die. Now, it's not in the same continuity as that, but it is kind of that spiritual successor feel to it. It's the only aspect that I've done with that. Ernst Stavro Blofeld is dead In his absence, the sinister Chaos, and that's an anagram for Chief Alliance for Order and Supremacy, has surfaced, an organization of international terrorists who wish to make way for a new world order. After attacking the last remnants of Spectre's headquarters in Norway and deposing the organization completely, they now have access to all of Spectre's intelligence as well as influence from all across the world. With the whole world in peril, James Bond is tasked by the British Secret Service to thwart a nefarious, synchronized nuclear missile plot that could obliterate every major nation in the world. Bond's mission takes him from the scenic vistas of Sydney, Australia, to the snowy peaks of Norway, and to the seedy underground bars of New York. With chaos everywhere, loyalties will be tested, and Bond must question whether he can ever truly trust the people he cares about the most, even within his own organization. So I guess there is an aspect of deception there with like the whole potentially someone in MI6 could be bent. But yeah, very back to basics. And as I mentioned, most of that is cliffed from the whole international organization. Deposing Blofeld was going to be the original idea for the plot of that film. And when I was watching No Time to Die, I did have that idea in mind. It did stick with me when we did the review on that, and I did the reading up on it before. And I thought, well, Blofeld's dead now, and Spectre have gone. So let's continue that theme. Let's bring in something new. It's the soft reboot thing. It's basically Spectre, let's be honest, but it's a new name. It's a new fresh coat of paint, and we've got Tilda Swinton as the new Blofeld. So that's my plot right there.
No, it's
traditional glory.
Tilda Swinton's perfect. It's about finding that jewel that's not been in a Bond film that you say the name and automatically should be in a Bond film, isn't it? And I think the chaos was great as well because I'm like you. I was like, I don't want Spectre. I don't want Spectre. I was like, I know we've had a film called Spectre and it's all this, but it's like I thought of Smersh, which is obviously the famous one. But I was like, no, that's Soviet, and I was like, kind of another organization. I was like, I'll just do Spectre again. But I really like this. I've written all this down. David Arnold, I want to talk about because he was my name until tonight. I switched it last minute. You know, I've seen June this week. I've been playing the Bond soundtrack all week. I've just booked Hans Zimmer tickets next year, and I was like, I need David Arnold. And I just thought, you know, going back to this, I'm glad you picked David Arnold because he, like I said, he was minutes away from being mine. I was like, it just Zimmer didn't get to start one. Like your reward for doing the last one is to do the new one.
Quantum of Solace can't be his last Bond score. That's why I picked him as well.
Yeah, also that, and I think he's done a lot of stuff over that series. I think is it the Amazon show with David Tennant and oh god, what's his name? It's the devil and the heavens.
Oh yeah, he was from Tron, wasn't he?
Of course, it's how I've forgotten his name. But the other one, there's the American. Anyway, ignore that. Henry Cavill, perfect Bond. The Bond we'll never get, who was destined to is. I feel really bad because I always talk about Idris Elba being like the Bond that we missed out on. I think we did, but Cavill was like screen tested.
Yeah, that kind of influenced my pick as well because that has been a recurring thing. You know, Brosnan, probably the major one, wasn't he? You know, that was going to be Bond and then couldn't be Bond and then eventually did get it. It's amazing how early on he was tested. Obviously, he was too young at that point, but I thought, can history repeat itself? And now with that Netflix thing, it ain't going to happen, is it? Let's be honest.
Yeah, but it's still a great point. I think he'll always be championed, and I love Hayley Atwell as Moneypenny, fantastic actress. Mark Rylance is cute, and another. I could have jokingly just done a list on this night and be like, "Here's the Nolan Bond film." Yeah, I think me and you've had these chat videos, right? We've joked like Mark Rylance is Michael Caine is Mark Rylance is Q, Cillian Murphy's this, and we've all had the joking conversations. But like, you know, Tate obviously mentioned Cillian Murphy earlier. You've mentioned Mark Rylance as well. Kenneth Branagh also in yours.
McConaughey as well. You know, Interstellar.
Yeah, McConaughey, Interstellar. We've got a bit of revival here. Rebecca Ferguson. Love Rebecca Ferguson. Lady Jessica. Lovely way to tease. We just did a June spoiler review. Rebecca Ferguson, perfect. Fassbender, though. Again, one of the big names touted as Bond. I think they've quietly quietened on that, but we know how good an actor he is at being a villain. We know how physical he is. And it's what you said. If you want like a mirror image of Bond, I think Fassbender would be perfect. Gaga, I think you'd spoke about this before. I think you mentioned it to me, and I was like, again, theme, she's the perfect Bond woman. She's an incredible actress as well. Really hope House of Gucci's good because I'm a bit nervous.
Yeah, from trailers, it's a bit shaky.
Yeah, it looks more like a comedy than a drama. But again, I could see her doing the theme, being in the film. In the same way that obviously Madonna asked for it, but I think if Bowie had been in View to a Kill, we'd have probably got a Bowie theme as well. Margot Robbie also kind of going. It's the Australia stuff, and I think that's why we've kind of got the nail. We've had a lot of similarities between us and people at home. This wasn't coordinated, but there were messages before we came on, like, do you have this? I'm like, yeah. And I was like, as a heads up, I've also got this. And you're like, yeah, me too. So there has been some natural collaborating over. But I want to go back to Mcconaughey because him as Felix would be perfect. I could picture him like, because I think we've had such a good relationship with Jeffrey Wright. It's like, how do you get started with charisma in? And it's like, Matthew McConaughey's like, okay, he brings it, you're in. And I can imagine him and Henry Cavill just going out for drinks with each other one night.
What the master plan of this was, you see, it's setting the stage so that Nolan could come on for his one and done on Her Majesty's Secret Service, and the cast's already there in place for him to use. It's perfect.
And he'll just be like, Felix Leiter, prepare to die again. And
exactly.
Like, oh, no. No, it's I really enjoy it, and it's solid as well. And it's hard to talk about the more critique thing because it's what we want, right? The Craig era is a story, and it's what you said earlier, back to basics. And that's not a criticism of the Craig films. I think that's just the way the Bond franchise has always gone. You've had normal drama, back to before. We'll try drama again. Okay, we're going back to what we were comfortable with. Now doing drama, and we've done so much drama, we physically can't do another character piece. Let's go back, and we have to. So it's a really safe bet, and I think as well looking forwards, age-wise, they'll work as well, which is a really important thing. But yeah, it's a solid. And also, I know I mentioned him earlier, but Mike Rylance again, an older Q. I'd be curious if they did it again. I think I'm so intertwined with the Desmond Llewellyn complex that like I need someone to do it for 30 years.
Yeah,
but
because they went so far in the opposite direction with Ben Whishaw, didn't they? Now it's wide open. It's like, do we stick around that same age for the modern age of films, or do we? Yeah,
or do we? The one thing I think we'd all agree on, we wouldn't want a middle-aged one. That would just be weird.
Like, it's one or the other. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's down to the beauty of Ben Whishaw and how long Desmond Llewellyn did it. But no, that's solid. And I don't even know how we segue out of this.
I guess that'll do it. I mean, there's 3 Bond films there for everyone, guys. Yeah. Like, we're not going to play favoritism, but what was some of like maybe your favorite elements from each of our different picks? Is there anything you change? Would you just change the whole thing, or maybe you've got your own Bond pitch that you can sort of put in the comments or anything? We'd love to hear it. Any casting, even if just casting for the new Bond. As I said, this is the question that everyone's asking at the moment, and we won't get an answer till probably next year. So we've got a lot of time to speculate until then, and it's all part of it. It's all part of being the Bond fan, and we're all it's a very humbling experience to now be in the same situation as everyone else and being as clueless as the rest of us at this point. But yeah, these have been 3 very interesting picks, some similarities, some wildly different. So hopefully there's something there for everyone. I think we've struck a balance with maybe what people are expecting and wanting from another Bond film, maybe.
No, definitely, and as we said, it's a really interesting thing to do that. This has been last minute. I think it's been a bit funner. We've not had as much time to prep because we've had to, come out with something special, and it's been really interesting to each one. And as I said, nothing's too similar. You might have a couple of crossovers, a location, a cast member, but story-wise, they all accommodate being a James Bond film. They all episodic. You could do all 3 if you really wanted to. Who knows? The Cinema Savvy trilogy. Let's not get this bankrolled. We can't afford any legal attacks from me on. But that being said, I think we should go to the socials where you can find us. If you're fuming, tweet us in your anger, comment in your anger, but tweet us in your anger at cinema_savvy.
Be gentle,
Facebook
please.
Letterboxd.com. Yeah. Also, I'm actually going to put this out there. Obviously, Tate came up with the Shatterglass. Me and Chris don't have titles.
Well, yeah, we did. That's a good point. Shit, we didn't.
I'm not naming one now. I'd want to know.
Come up with names for us. For both of our films. I want
an old school 4 or 5. So come up with names. Comment them below. Again, we've got Shatterglass on the title list, and now we just need one for mine and one for Chris's. So that is your homework, because obviously Bond content isn't going away. It's so weird to jump from calling it the Bond Retrospective to now just Bond content.
Yeah,
but I think we've handled it all right. But kicking this off is going to be this Tuesday, the 1967 Casino Royale, David Niven film. None of us have seen this. So this is going to be an experience, I think, for both of us to talk about. So do join us. I think we're going to be live for that one. So do join us on that video. That's going to be fun. And as normal, there's been so many reviews out in the last week. The Last Duel, Halloween Kills, Dune. What else was there? Venom. Yeah, and there's still stuff coming out. So do stick around. We've got a lot more videos on the way. Hit that subscribe button. hit the notifications on. As I said, Bond stuff every Tuesday. We've got Never Seen Ever Again coming soon, and then a couple of spin-offs like Austin Powers and whatnot. So, yeah. Any final thoughts, Chris? Anything I missed out on saying? I really don't know.
I think that'll do it. I think we've covered everything. We, as always, we pass over to you guys now. Let us know what you think. It's going to be very interesting. Like, dare I read the comments? I don't know. I probably will out of curiosity. This has been really fun to do. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. Please do send yours in as well. And until the next video, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.